Hi there, I'm Jim Zirin. Welcome back for more conversations. Kyung-wha is with us. Dr. Kang has just moved to New York from Seoul, South Korea, to take over the reins of the Asia Society from Kevin Rudd, who became the Australian ambassador to the United States. She has a distinguished background as a diplomat, having served for 4 years as South Korea's 38th Minister of Foreign Affairs, the first woman to serve in this role in the nation's history. She previously held key roles at the United Nations and was appointed to important positions: Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights under Kofi Annan, Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs under Ban Ki-moon, and Senior Advisor on Policy to Antonio Guterres. She has hit the ground running at the Asia Society, and I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Kyung-wha to the program to tell us all about it. Welcome. It's an honor for us that you're here.
Thank you very much, Jim. Very happy to be here.
And you're not a stranger to the United States or to New York, even though you took this new post just this past April. So tell us about your background.
Well, I was here initially 5 years as a South Korean diplomat with a ROK mission in New York. And that was in the early part of the 2000s. And then I came back as a UN official to work in the humanitarian field, so 4 years. For altogether, I've lived in and around the city for nearly 10 years, so it's like coming back home, and really happy to be back in New York.
So you're practically a New Yorker. Yes. But you were educated. You got your advanced degrees here.
Oh, yes, well, up in Massachusetts, at the University of Massachusetts,
well, that counts.
Amherst, yes. So I have a bit of a Red Sox fandom behind me. But I was there to study intercultural international communication for my master's and PhD. Went back home and served in the National Assembly for many years and then joined the Foreign Ministry. So I was in public service all my career, whether it's in Korea or at the UN.
Now, you were the first woman ever to be the foreign minister of South Korea.
Yes.
Now, you became foreign minister after we had Madeleine Albright and Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton. Was that a difficult path to take?
Yes. Well, all wonderful models. In particular, Madeleine was a great mentor, and I think I followed her leadership and learned a great deal from her. Yes, it was. I was the first, the 38th and the first. And, I think I was prepared with all of my UN experience and the foreign minister experience. But it really was the political will of the President Moon Jae-in, who wanted 30% women in his initial cabinet. And not just, the traditional women's portfolio in, gender equality and family, not just these light portfolios, but really heavy-duty portfolios that were traditionally men-led, like transportation and construction.
Now, have other women broken ground since your tenure as foreign minister?
Not yet. Since I left, there have been 1, 2, now the third. Having been the first, you always have this desire. The second can't be that far. Please, the second has to come, the third, fourth, so that it becomes a routine. It hasn't happened, and this is the big issue with the first women's. It takes a long time for the second women to come, and not just in this position, but many other positions of leadership, and that requires a concerted effort to grow capable women.
So now you're the leader of the Asia Society. We have had a woman as past leader.
Yes.
What attracted you to this position?
Well, Asia. I've always known, Asia Society has such a wonderful reputation here in New York, in many other places around the world, and I've known Asia Society as a presence in New York where wonderful things happened, and have come to see many of those while I was living here as part of the UN mission, and the Korean mission. But when I was offered to try out this position, of course I looked more deeply into this, and at that point having had so much more experience as foreign minister, now having this nearly 4 years of experience, intense experience of dealing with the world as a South Korean foreign minister, and then also the UN experience. I think, I have the skill set to take Asia society to the next level. I think Asia society is also wanting to make that leap from, not just about Asia, but with Asia. And I think I bring that with Asia element. Yes, Vishaka and Josette were my two women predecessors. Vishaka, I had a wonderful conversation with her. She is a great mentor. But they're all Americans, right? By I think, culturally, of course, she had a great Indian background, but the nationality of all of our predecessors, all of my predecessors were American, or Kevin Rudd, Australian. So I think the board really wanted to go beyond that traditional mold and bring in somebody who would really say, we are now not just about Asia, but with Asia. And here I am.
An Asian leader for the Asia Society.
Yes.
So tell us about your vision for the society. What is it going to do that it hasn't done before? Well, first tell us what has it done? It started as a museum.
It is so much more than a museum now. As you know, we have a huge policy pillar, which my predecessor Kevin has done a great deal to build it up. And I think especially on China, we are what we call not just a think tank, but a think and do tank. So we don't do research in the way the traditional big research outfits do. We do research that is analytical about the policies that are being devised or implemented. So to me, it's more policy analysis research, whether it's climate change or security, and then to come out with reports with recommendations for key countries, and we do a lot of that for China. Not only research, but also dialogue, 1.5, 2.0 track dialogue that is beyond government discussions. So, and in fact, we're having a 1.5 dialogue taking place in Beijing next week. So this is a series. So the output in terms of the research, but also in terms of being a platform for these discussions. At a situation where the dialogue between the government, the official dialogue has been rather difficult and strained. And so we would like to provide that extra layer, additional layer of dialogue, people-to-people exchanges, to be a part of what I would call a force for the positive side of things in this very difficult bilateral relationship. And that's China. But it's not just China. We also have a research capacity at our center in India, for example, which looks at very closely at what's going on in India. I'd like to grow that policy focus to be more diverse, to represent the full extent of Asia. So far, it is not. And so I would like to, so that when we think of Asia Society, it immediately says, oh, we can go to Asia Society to find out about what is going on in this country about climate change. So we have what we call a climate action map for Asia, and it's interactive. And so, it shows the map of Asia, and you click a country, and it shows you the kinds of policies, the kinds of actions that country is taking or has committed to take on climate change. We don't have all countries covered. I think now we have the key countries covered at least, but we want to expand that. So, that too, go to a place where you want to find out what that country is doing in some of these critical issues of the day. I also want to, re-strengthen our arts and culture pillar. As you say, it is what started Asia Society, and we have a long, long tradition and a footprint in that regard. We have a wonderful collection from the Rockefeller family, and it sits in our storage, very well taken care of. But I'd like to pull that out and have it part as a Asia Society's face. It's not visible very. The name Asia Society, and everybody knows that it's John D. Rockefeller III founded it. But I'd like to bring that collection out to be a more everyday, present face of Asia Society, to really remind us about where were our roots, but not just to stay there, but to say to bring in the arts and culture side of Asia to the contemporary times, and not just, but clearly indicating this is how we started and this is where we're going. We just had a wonderful Asia Society Asia Arts Game Changers Award, which we're doing, was a little bit stopped during the COVID situation, but now we came back and did a real full-fledged Artist Game Changers Award event this year, and we brought out 5 wonderful contemporary women artists with Asian roots, whether they were in their own countries or in as part of the Asian diaspora here in the United States. 5 of them, every one of them just wonderful with their own artistic space.
Well, we used to think of Asia as the continent of Asia, and immediately coming to mind Korea, Japan, and of course China.
Yes.
Now people talk of the Indo-Pacific region.
Yes, yes.
So it brings in India.
Of course, of course.
From the point of view of Asia Society, you're also bringing in the Middle East. You have outposts in Paris.
Yes, yes.
Pretty soon you're going to be covering the whole world. I mean,
Well, we'd be happy
what
to.
are the limits of Asia, if any?
We also, Asia, of course, is ASEAN, the Southeast Asian.
Oh, I left that out, of course.
Yes, and of course, we also have Australia. Ours is what we call a franchise model. We don't say, for sitting here in New York, we don't say, oh, we want a center there and find partners to work with there. But it is the homegrown desire to work with us, because they trust the name Asia Society, what Asia Society stands for, and wants to do the work, the same mission in that context. So we've had long-standing centers in Hong Kong, in Houston, LA, and San Francisco, and now Japan, Korea, Australia, India, and we now have centers in Zurich to do what they called Asian competency for Swiss. And we now have also a center in Paris for
the Olympics.
No, well, Olympics is too immediate. It's just getting off the ground, but it has this ambition to be the Asia Society go-to place for all of Europe. So we'll see how that rolls out. So, and we welcome that desire to share our mission in the local context. And because it's locally driven, the kinds of programmatic activities are very local driven, and we welcome that diversity. It's a bit of a challenge bringing about the coordination, but we have daily, I sit on some of these boards of the local centers to make sure that I get a sense of what they're doing and they get a sense of where we are at headquarters.
Okay, so let's talk about China, because it's hard to talk about Asia without talking about China. And of course, people speculate endlessly about the temperature of our relations with the Chinese. How do you see it? Is it becoming more fractious, or is it?
We happen to have our very just top diplomat as they come, the ambassador Nicholas Burns, into Asia Society yesterday for a private dinner with our key trustees and other leaders, and then a public event. And he was so very clear that U.S.-China are in a systemic competition, not just for 1 or 2 years, but for a very long term. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't talk. In fact, the more competition, the more there has to be dialogue. And
Just
after
recently, the two militaries have talked.
the
for the first
militaries are
time in a long
talking,
time.
their experts on AI are talking. There's talk on the whole issue of the fentanyl, the ingredients. So after the summit meeting in San Francisco last year, and we're confirmed of this by the ambassador, it's been a period of stability in this bilateral relationship, and certainly I think the whole world very much hope that will continue to be the case. Yeah? So competition, but managed competition with dialogue, because if you compete and you don't talk, it could easily lead to a whole lot of misunderstanding, distrust, and confrontation. So,
of course, as you know, Ray Dalio, who operates the world's largest hedge fund,
yes,
billionaire, spoke in Hong Kong recently.
yes, yes.
And he expressed a fear that the economic competition and the possible outcome of the U.S. election would lead to a deterioration of the relationship, perhaps even a military confrontation. Do you agree with him?
Well, I think, everything is possible, but everything is possible to prevent, because these are all the consequences of human action and human decisions. So the key is, while competing, not to let things get out of the hand, and to have sufficient levels of discussion so that things are managed, right? I think, yes, especially the latest issue of overcapacity in China on the electric vehicles, on the lithium batteries, and the solar panels, and all of that, has led the U.S. government to impose 100% tariff on the Chinese EVs. There are similar movements going on in European countries. Yes, that's at the end, it's a big hurdle for companies to understand, first of all, and to work around so that they don't get in the crosshairs of a regulation that the American government has put in.
So actually, the attitudes of the two political parties in the United States, who are now facing an election in a few months,
Yes.
are not that different with regard to China, are they?
Well, I think broadly similar. In fact, the Trump administration was keen on the trade deficit, right? And so they were working hard with the Chinese side to bring that deficit down. I think the Biden administration has gone on further to strengthen the relationship with its security allies, such as Korea, such as the U.S., such as Japan and others, Australia. So, making that the U.S. acts vis-a-vis China in close consultation and close solidarity with the security allies. So I think in a way the Biden administration has taken that one step further beyond the economic realm. And if Mr. Biden continues in office, that we can expect very much that to continue. That is predictable, right? If we get a different result, that it will bring about a great deal of unpredictability. And I think that's, businessmen, the one thing that business people don't like is unpredictability. Even if tariffs, even if sanctions, if they are predictably there, they can find ways to work with it or around it, but it's the unpredictability.
They like predictable sanctions.
Right. Well, sanctions, there are sanctions and there are sanctions. I think the minute you raise the word sanction, it immediately creates a sense of fear. Okay, this is going to be a problem. But I think you have to understand why the sanctions are in place to begin with. Some are unilateral sanctions by the United States, but there are also global sanctions imposed, for example, on North Korea because of their nuclear program, and that's binding on everybody. So within the world of sanctions, there's various kinds and various levels of severity. I don't agree with all of them, but I think in some cases it's absolutely necessary.
Well, you brought up North Korea, and when Trump was president, he met with Kim Jong-un 3 times.
Yes.
And when he said he was going to meet with him the first time, he sort of did it very quickly. And as foreign minister, you were somewhat surprised at the celerity with which he moved, but you were optimistic. Did he accomplish anything with the 3 meetings?
Well, the first one in Singapore was, I think, because it was the first, and there was a bit of a drama before that, because in the weeks leading up to the Singapore summit, the North Koreans, one of their officials said something nasty about Vice President, I think. So Trump said, in that, this is unacceptable, we're not going to do this. So, and then I think Kim Jong-un was taken aback, so he contacted my president and asked to meet my president at the DMZ. So in fact, that was their second encounter. And he did this very quietly. He didn't announce it. We only announced it afterwards. But after that meeting, short meeting, we then talked to I talked to Mr. Pompeo and conveyed the outcome of that conversation. And that convinced them to, okay, then we will have the summit meeting. So the summit meeting was a historic first of the U.S. president meeting the leader of North Korea. It came out with broad agreements, not concrete action points, but broad pillars that North Korea will denuclearize, that U.S. and North Korea will work towards a better relations. The fourth point, I think, was that they will cooperate to find the remains of the soldiers during the Korean War times. And there was 4 points. So it was a broad points of agreement, which would be the foundation of the preparation for the second summit meeting in Hanoi, right? I think we would have liked that to be a little bit more concrete. But we were very happy that it had happened, and we were very supportive of that. Of course, then things broke apart in Hanoi when that agreement didn't lead to anything further more concrete. The North Koreans wanting security guarantees from the Americans and sanctions relief, and the Americans wanting North Korea's more concrete, more expansive commitment to do away with their nuclear program. So the talks broke down, and that was the end of that. The leaders met briefly again in the DMZ that summer, but it was just a brief encounter. That's truly regrettable that we've missed that opportunity to, whatever was the difficulty of reaching an agreement in Hanoi. I think in hindsight, it would have been we would find ourselves in a so much better situation if the talks continued. I know that the domestic environment in the U.S. was difficult. Kim Jong-un probably felt very embarrassed and humiliated after Hanoi. But somehow that dynamic, that momentum for dialogue had to continue.
And quickly, because we're coming to the end, but Korea, Japan.
Yes.
There has been a great deal of difficulty in the relationship because of the issue of the comfort women and the failure of Japan properly to apologize. But lately, there seems to have been a thaw in relations. Can you comment on that?
So there is the issue of the past history has not gone away, and is still there. I very much hope that at some point it will be squarely dealt with, so that there can be true, real, genuine trust.
Well, we had a writer named William Faulkner who said, "The past is not dead; it's not even past." So here we are. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Will Asia Society be helpful in forging a new relationship between the United States and the Indo-Pacific region?
Yes, as I say, there are so many ways we do that work to reinforce, to strengthen the forces for peace, to strengthen the forces that ameliorates against the confrontational elements. Indo-Pacific, we're doing a lot between the United States and China. We do a lot. I think with India, our policy analysis is not as deep as we do for China, but I can see us playing that role as a dialogue facilitator in many other pockets of dispute, potential confrontation. And I think we have that credibility. I think we have the confidence of key players throughout the region for them to be able to come to us, say, be the not necessarily mediator, but at least a platform for dialogue, and we're ready to do that anytime.
Asia Society is ready at any time.
Yes.
So, Minister Kang, thank you so much for coming by. This has just been wonderful.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more conversations. I'm Jim Zirin. Meanwhile, be well and all the best.